Hello, I'm Chaplain Larry Crabtree with the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office and the Maryland State Police Leonardtown Barrack.
And I'm Chaplain Charlie Wharton with the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office. And Larry, in this segment of videos, we've been talking about some lessons that we've learned over the last couple of decades that you and I have been doing this. And give me another lesson that you've learned.
You know, I think one of the important lessons that I've learned is that we are all, and when I say all, I mean all of us, I don't care who you are, we're all broken. We're all broken people. And what I mean by broken is that every one of us are struggling with something and in some way. For instance, some people struggle with addictions. And law enforcement, you see that all the time. I mean, that's a big problem, whether there's alcohol, drugs, whatever it might be. But you know, there are other people that struggle with looking up the likes on Facebook after they post something. And it really all comes down to that fact that no matter who we are, we're hurting, and we're trying to find some way to be accepted, to anesthetize that little hurt and that sting that's in our heart and life. That's true of me. That's true of you.
And that's one of the most difficult things that as a minister in particular and as a chaplain, we kind of struggle with because we have to too often play a role. When did you discover this? What in your background kind of brought this to your attention?
I have a unique background. I grew up in a religious family that was extremely strict, and I mean real strict. Literally in my household, first of all, I'm the oldest. So as the oldest, I mean, you weren't allowed to do anything. I mean, obviously, I think in any family, let's say the firstborn is typically the one the parents are the hardest on. Well, I knew that. And the second was because of the strict religious upbringing, my family believed your hair had to be cut a certain way, you had to dress a certain way, we were forbidden to attend movies, and all these kind of rules and regulations. And that strictness began to teach me that my value and my acceptance was based upon what I did, my performance. So I even began to think in my head, if my parents really love me, they're going to love me because I've performed to their expectation, or I don't make them look bad. Well, if I make them look bad, well, then they're not going to love me. And I know my parents love me, but this is what it was breeding inside of me. And so I was constantly miserable. I'd look at people all around me. I judge them all the time. Hey, you're not dressed right. You're not acting right. You're not doing that right. And I was miserable. So because of that, I had become increasingly sensitive to recognize that I'm broken, you're broken, we're all broken, and it changes the way I look at people.
How do you take that lesson that you learned and teach it to the deputies or show them what they need to do or how they need to live?
And I think that's important because oftentimes I think in police careers, you're seeing the mess-ups of so many people in so many different ways, and you can get really critical and really cynical. And it's what happens, the result is that the officer begins to get sick inside because all they ever see is negative and bad, and they tend to forget that they themselves also struggle, that there's areas in their lives they hurt. We all want some form of acceptance. We're all trying to anesthetize these little pains. And so I think it's helpful if I can somehow encourage, even by sharing my story or my experiences, to help law enforcement officers recognize we have to soften a little bit. I have a little phrase I have in my life. I call it breathe grace. We need to be people that breathe grace. Maybe they don't necessarily deserve that kindness or that little bit of understanding, but out of our own heart, we certainly wish we would receive it, and we need to be more willing to give that. And I think for law enforcement officers, if they can approach their job with that way, if they can breathe grace, you actually become a very excellent law enforcement officer, because you understand people with a little more sympathy, and you can engage, I think, in a little bit deeper, more meaningful way. And then life becomes even more meaningful for you.
Is that just for those people on the street, or how do you bring that into the squad room as well?
There you go. It's all around. Or your home, the same way in your home life. So this is a constant mindset that we have to deal with. So law enforcement chaplaincy has taught me that lesson.
We have to be prepared to understand and willing to accept that we are broken as well, and then to be able to share that with other people.
It makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference.
All right. Sounds like a great way to invest your life and your profession.
That's right. And by the way, that's one of the ways, as we sign off, that you can be strong
and be safe.